Hello everyone! Today I wanted to talk a little bit more about how to practice writing and how to get better at writing. If you've studied art or looked into how artists, especially those who do traditional art, so pencil and paper or charcoal or oil or painting, any of that, you know that they paint or draw or sketch so many things just as practice. I wanted to help you today by giving you a chance to learn how to do that with your writing. So here are a few of my favorite ways to get better at writing. Number one is to read books in your genre. This book is a book that I read early January? March? I don't know, somewhere in there. But I read Runaway, and I reviewed it on my blog, so if you're curious about my thoughts on it, go check that out at authorjjhanna.com. But I write suspense novels, and in order to stay up to date with what's being published, what trends are following through right now in the market, what readers are expecting in suspense novels, I need to read current suspense novels. So that's number one, is go read current books in your genre. So for me, that's suspense novels. For some of my friends, that's YA fantasy. For some of my friends, it's all of the nonfiction books they can get their hands on. So whatever it is you write, go read in your genre, get a feel for what readers expect, what an editor would be looking for, because especially the ones by the big five. So this one is published by it's published by Grand Central Publishing, which is a subset of Hachette. So if you can find books published by the big five publishers, or even the bigger publishers located in New York, you're going to have a pretty good chance of figuring out what the trends are in the market right now for the books that you write. Next up, one of my other favorite things to do, that I actually still need to do this year, is read at least one book on writing, on the craft of writing, as much as you can. This was the first book on the craft of writing that I ever read. It was my freshman year college textbook for my Intro to Professional Writing class. The Writers on Writing, edited by James Watkins, contributed to by all of those people. If you are looking for a really good book about how to get into writing, how to get published, current and pretty typical writing mistakes that people tend to make grammatically or with plot or whatever, this book is going to help a ton. It's really simple to the point, but it will teach you so many things about writing that you might not know, or that you do know, and it's just good to be reminded of. But if you read a book on craft every once in a while, you don't have to do it all the time, but at least one book a year on craft will help you as you go about trying to become a better writer. I've done an entire video on my writing resources bookshelf, so I'll link to that there. Next up, read books and stories not in your genre, especially short stories. I love this book. It's called The Story and Its Writer, by Ann Charters. And this one is essentially a bunch of short stories followed by little notes and commentaries, or interviews that Ann Charters did with these authors about their writing processes, about how they write. It's super helpful because it allows you to get into the mind of the writer of some of the most popular and classic pieces of literature you'll ever read. Also, these are classics for a reason, and there are some things that classics do really well, and there are some things that classics do that are no longer adequate for the times that we live in. But they're still worth studying. It's like, as a music major, you still study Beethoven, even though he's not producing anything anymore. you still have to go learn what they did well, learn what you can from them, and then modify it to fit your audience and your needs. But this book in particular, or other anthologies like it, there are so many anthologies out there where you can find like Norton anthologies of just so many classics. So you can buy one book and get like 15 to 20 to 50 to 100 short stories or plays or other pieces of literature. Totally worth it. There's a reason they're used in English classes in colleges and high schools around the world. And anyway, it gives you a chance to read things like Heart of Darkness or Metamorphosis or all sorts of other books and stories that you've heard about, but that you haven't necessarily read. So, read an anthology, browse through one, get to know the old writers, get to know new writers, learn how to write well. Next step, learn how to read well. This book I read when I was just starting out in my AP literature classes in high school. This book taught me so much about how to read with an analytical eye. Learn how to pick out symbolism, learn how to look for the numbers and the colors, and there's a section in here where they talk about the hillsides and setting and how all of that feeds into symbolism, and even just how to read books in a way that helps you understand them more than just for pleasure. That can be hard to do because it's not as fun to suddenly have your analytical glasses on all the time whenever you're reading. But as a writer, if you're trying to learn how to write well, the best way to do that is by reading, and reading analytically. So if you're going to become a good writer, you have to be a good reader. And things like this book can help you do that. Lastly, if you have ever studied artists, you'll find that they do what we call warm-up exercises. They just draw a bunch of lines, or a bunch of the same squiggly lines, or circles, or dots, or fill an entire page with spirals, whatever, right? It warms up their muscles, but it also helps with stability, and it helps increase their skills in being able to draw a straight line without a ruler, or being able to draw that perfect curve or that perfect circle. Same thing happens with writing, and that's where books like this one come in. This is 642 Things to Write About. It is full of prompts, really short little prompts. You don't have to get this little book. You can just scroll through the internet. Tons of people do writing prompts all the time. But essentially, following through with something like this before you write every day, it'll help you practice descriptions. It'll help you practice getting into the heads and minds of other characters that you might not necessarily have thought you wanted to be in their mind before. It'll help you think creatively and think outside the box in ways that you wouldn't come up with on your own. So this sort of thing is super helpful if you just take 5 to 10 minutes before your actual diving into the book, diving into your project, your articles, your nonfiction book, whatever. It'll help you learn how to articulate things better, and by the time that you finish something like this, you will be a better writer because you've done it regularly. Especially if you do all 642 things to write about. That's a lot of things, and this isn't even the only book like this. So that's essentially some of the ways that you can practice writing. After you go through those and you get really good at doing that sort of thing on a regular basis, the next step is to start going through and intentionally trying to craft stories on a regular basis. When I was starting writing, I did this by trying to write a short story every week. This began as a flash fiction project, but one of the first ones I did of that nature is actually currently on my blog. And here, I'll put the video that I read that somewhere up there. And when I was doing that, I was doing it because I wanted to get in the habit of writing regularly. So you can do that. You can write a short story or a blog or something every week. Try to create one finished project every week, or at the very least every month. That's what I'm doing with my Patreon family. That's why I started putting short stories on my blog, why I started reading them here. Having the current and dedicated library of here's from where I started to where I am now. You can track your own growth. You can see how you've become a better writer. And even more importantly, you can start sharing your work with the world, which is one of the most important aspects of becoming a writer. There are some things that you have to write just for yourself, like keeping a journal or short stories or experimental pieces, right? Things that you will never publish and never plan to, and that's totally okay, and that's the point of them. But there are other things that you do need to practice getting yourself out there, practice putting yourself out there, practice taking that risk. Because the more times that you practice taking that risk of publication, the easier it'll be when that giant risk of, here's a book, I want it published, when that comes out, that risk is going to feel so much easier to handle than if you hadn't done anything in the past. So I hope this helps you as you try to become a better writer, as you practice becoming a better writer. Here are ways to practice your writing. Here are ways to improve your craft, improve your knowledge of the industry, and everything else in that way. And until next time, I will see you then. If you like these videos, go ahead and like and subscribe and share them with a friend. Check out my Patreon account down below. There's a link. You can find me at www.patreon.com/jjhanna. And I would love to have you join me there. You can join for as little as $1 a month or as much as $50 a month. It's up to you. There are a few different tiers with different rewards associated with them. Go check it out. And until next time, keep writing, stay safe, stay classy. Bye.